Now remember, just because a drug is prescribed does not mean that it's FDA approved. And that distinction matters a lot with compounded GLP-1 pills. So the question is, are compounded GLP-1 pills legal, or is it a regulatory gray zone? Let's start by talking about the FDA approved versions. So FDA approved products go through years of testing. The FDA reviews the exact formulation, how the pill survives digestion, how it's absorbed, how consistent each dose is, and how it's made at scale. It's called scaling up. With pills that's kind of hard because GLP-1 drugs tend to break down the stomach. They tend to get absorbed poorly, and that's why the injections came first. And that's why FDA approval is expensive. Now compare this to the compounded versions. Compounded GLP-1 drugs are not FDA approved. They're allowed only when the patient needs something that's unique to them, some kind of customization, something that the approved drug cannot provide, like a specific formulation, a specific dose, something like that. The FDA does not review these products for safety or effectiveness or efficacy, if you will. And that difference matters. With an approved drug, the FDA the FDA knows what's in every single dose. They've seen the testing, they know what's supposed to be happening. On the other hand, with the compounded drug, you're relying on the pharmacy's formulation and processes. I say this as a pharmacist, I say this as someone who's compounded loads and loads of times. There is a shifting of risk. Some of that risk obviously sits with the pharmacy, some with the prescriber, but in the end, as the patient, the health risk ultimately sits with you. So are compounded GLP-1 pills legal? Sometimes. They're legal when they're truly patient-specific and they're limited in scope. They become a problem when the compounding starts looking like a mass production or a substitute for approved drugs. There are times when that's appropriate. This is not one of those times in most cases. And that's when FDA enforcement shows up. At the end of the day, the FDA only cares about 4 different things. They want to make sure you don't have to. They want to make sure it's safe and efficacious. They want to make sure it's not adulterated or misbranded. Now, the question is, if you can do this consistently, that's a good thing. And that's when the FDA tends to look at you a little poorly if you cannot do that consistently. And when demand explodes, quality suffers. And these tolerated exceptions, they disappear. So if you're considering a compounded GLP-1 pill, understand what you're choosing. You're not getting the same review, you're not getting the same consistency as the protections of an FDA-approved product. That doesn't make it wrong, but it does make it different, and this difference matters. If this helped, subscribe. I explain healthcare issues in ways that patients actually understand, and hopefully it helps you a little bit. Look forward to hearing more from you on Darshan Talks.